a lot about love languages, but this week on Carlie's Couch, we're discussing conflict styles. So when I was researching, in the 1970s, psychologists Kenneth W. Thomas and Ralph H. Kilman studied different approaches people have to conflict and split them actually into 5 groups. And they actually paired animals with them. And so today we're going to go through the different 5 conflict styles and talk about, the pros and cons and why one's not necessarily better than the other ones, but, when they might be applicable.
With this guy, the psychologist, both of them, Thomas and Kilman, is that like something that they coined? Like no, these different languages or not really?
They said like the styles, they did coin these and there's actually like a quiz. And so it's a very common leadership quiz to take and be like the lion, the otter, the beaver, and the whatever else. And so I think it's kind of interesting too that there's one for conflict, but also very necessary.
I think because of people's personalities, sometimes like for me, I don't know if you could speak to this, but sometimes for me, even if I'm trying to go through conflict like a certain kind of way that I think I'm, allowing space to talk and all that, and it's like they still like it's just still off. Bro. Or it's like we're not talking about the same thing, and then you just start getting frustrated, and it's like maybe there needs to be a different style sometimes because it just there's just those times when I just feel like we're just not on the same wavelength at all. So I feel like this is interesting to hear about different styles that people may have. Because maybe if I can kind of identify, like, all right, what's their approach, then it may be helpful for me to, like, better, I guess, engage with them.
1,000,000,000,000%. It's so funny. I've been thinking about that too. And whenever I first started at USC, we took all these freaking quizzes, like leadership style, and conflict style, da 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 da. And I also want to throw out, it's not discussed in this particular quiz and in the results, but to also think about timing, because just similar to love languages, like you're going to have all 5. Like there's not a time when you're 100% of anything, but to think about how you approach certain things. Like maybe you are avoidant whenever it comes to romantic relationships, but you're direct and aggressive whenever it comes to work. And so just noticing like maybe the timing is wrong. So maybe, trying to figure out like thinking about when things happen, and maybe we can discuss about some different examples, but what's your approach? And so that quiz is actually like a color quiz, and it's like red, green, blue, and yellow. And it's like, red is like aggressive, and then blue is like really like amable, like we're friends, I don't want to do this, and then green is like, well, here's all the data for why da 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 da, and then yellow is whatever. And like we gonna talk about it, and then I'm gonna get aggressive, and then I'm gonna leave it alone. And so also thinking about like your timing and how you are, because again, as we talk through these, think about which ones you are, and like when you notice it, what's your first response, and then your next one, and then inevitably your third one.
It's like a traffic light, because I know immediately if I start talking, it's not gonna be thought through, and it's probably gonna be a little harsh. But then I notice like later on, I'd be like, dang, that's exact, like would have been the perfect response that like would have been me really saying how I really feel, or, whatever it might be, right? So I think that's pretty interesting, too, to think about how even if you know yourself, maybe you know what might be more effective or efficient, and like that might just take a little more time. Or maybe you need to trust your first thing instead of letting it sit. So listen up to all these different conflict language styles that we're going to go through, and just see which ones ring for you. Because like Carlie said, it's not necessarily that any one is better than the other. And depending on what you're actually trying to accomplish, it might make more sense to pay attention to where you are.
Yep. So starting with the sharks, which are competing. So in the competing conflict language, it is assertive and uncooperative. When you're in this mode, you may try to satisfy your own concerns at the other person's expense because you're just trying to win. Like you may view being right more important than your relationship with the person, but you just want to be right. It makes me think about, do you want to love, or do you want to be right? And like thinking about the people in your life. And so this one is actually really good to use whenever you need like quick decisive action. So if something is happening in this emergency situation, it is perfectly okay to be like, you call 911. Yeah. You go, if you're the only one moving, you do this.
Yeah.
And that's perfect. And then another one is, and I mean, this might be, I don't know, it might just kind of depend on the person, but like whenever you're certain you're right, but I feel like sometimes people are certain they're right and they're not right.
But again, I feel like I can see if it's in a certain situation where it's like somebody needs to just get everybody on the same program. Yep. Maybe sometimes it's less about like if you're 100% right, but like you are making things move and shake as need be. Like maybe y'all need to get out of this place or whatever.
Or maybe we're planning a vacation and the person just gotta pull the trigger on a place and on a thing, because if not, you might go back and forth trying to vote on something. And what about this? And what about this? Sometimes you just actually have to do the thing.
And so that's kind of a cool thing to consider, is that even though it's more assertive and even though it's uncooperative, there are spaces for that, and or there are spaces where that's not necessarily a bad thing. So, and I think at the end of the day, sometimes people respect those types of folks, sharks, when it comes to conflict, because one thing you know is like something's gonna get done. You just might like it, you might not.
Because if it's at your expense, you probably won't enjoy it. Okay, now we're on to the turtles, or avoiding.
You get the picture of why a turtle would be the avoidant in conflict language. So they're unassertive and uncooperative. So it says in this mode, you're trying to sidestep the conflict without attempting to satisfy anybody. This may include giving up altogether on whatever the goals are, giving up on the relationship, just saying like, all right, never mind. It could be beneficial at times. I can imagine if there's like a group effort and perhaps maybe somebody is just taking the lead, like it's no point to just hop in, especially if I don't got no ideas. Or if like you feel like you do need more time to think about something or figure something out, then maybe it's not helpful just to jump in just to be jumping in. Again, if you're not necessarily haven't thought it through. But another issue with it is that it's so trivial. There's no point in putting time and energy into dealing with it. So for me, I feel like if you're the turtle and you have an avoidant conflict style, you're probably also somebody who like doesn't get what you want in general. And so I think this is going to be one of those spaces where you're allowing yourself to coast along with whatever somebody else's program is. So that's also another big thing I would say about that.
Yeah, I think on the flip side, this one could be really good. Like, if you fighting about every single thing with your partner, it probably is not going to work out. And so sometimes, inevitably, it might be okay to not say something because you don't like the way that they load the dishwasher. Or every single time they do a thing to not say it. Like, I think we have to learn when things are worth bringing up. And so that could be a good sign. I also, like, sometimes you do need to take your time on decisions and get into your shell to figure out what you need to do. So
yeah, I could definitely see how the person who does have to go through every conflict and bring up everything, especially with somebody you're seeing every day or all the time, definitely, like, sometimes you just got to stop. I see that immediately help in my relationships where it's like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, and it does feel whack to feel kind of avoidant sometimes. And it's so worth like another person for once not being reminded that they need to step their game up. And then sometimes people are in a better mood and then they step their game up. So, yeah.
you know,
Just let it live. Let people do what they do.
Okay, so we've done direct and uncooperative. We've done avoidant and uncooperative. And now we're on unassertive and cooperative.
So I see how like this is just one of those squares with the dots.
And so in this mode, which is a teddy bear, they're accommodating. So you're accommodating, you're unassertive and cooperative. In this mode, you try to satisfy the other person's concerns at the expense of your own. Hello, people pleasers. These individuals generally hide their relationships over their own goals, but almost never leave a conflict satisfied because you're accommodating.
These people always end up feeling resentful or feeling like, why am I doing so much? Or every year they make their resolutions to focus on
boundaries.
Yeah.
And look, I've been there and had to learn how to not people please, and not saying people pleasing is wrong because it comes from trauma and a bunch of stuff. However, if you are not getting what you want, it is a time that you address that and work on that for yourself. Can you think of any situations when accommodating can be good to use?
Yeah, for sure. If the relationship's more important and the outcome's really not that serious, like if your girlfriend want to go see Terminator 15 and you like, ugh. But you know, it's like whatever, you know,
disgusting your voice.
Yeah, you like, all right, cool. You know, you can let things go, and sometimes it's like a reset in your mind of like, let me focus on the fact that they're asking me to go see this movie or want to share something with me, even if I don't like it.
I think another good application of this is if you're used to trying to like help other people do stuff or step in too much or save them from things, like it's important to let them kind of learn their own lesson. And so, you know, Like, all right, I'm just going to step away and let you learn from your own mistakes, not really save you from, something that maybe we already talked about.
Like, if they think they're right, just let them,
yeah,
you got
and figure it out.
And sometimes it's better for your own peace, too. Like, man, the more you get to be like, yeah, you got it. Okay. If it's not, especially if it's not, like, directly, like, affecting you, I think that's just better because you can tell when you care so much about what other people are making decisions about, it's like you have an ownership kind of like what they're doing and kind of overly responsible. And it just feels better to not have that weight on your shoulder.
Absolutely.
Okay. But also I would say for family members or people that, you got to live with them, see them, sometimes. You
got it.
Yeah, you got it. So yeah, sometimes I'm like that for harmony's sake. But then there's other places where you want to, not that you want to be more seen, because I think we all want to be seen, but there's some places where I will not allow myself to not be seen in this space. Like in a partner that I got to see every day, as opposed to, your friend you see once every few years and y'all get together, or maybe your family every once in a while, whatever. Like, that's what makes it different, I think.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Definitely a time to think about it.
Another conflict language is compromising, and this is associated with foxes. And it says this is the intermediate, where in both assertiveness and cooperativeness. So we got a little more oomph on it. In this mode, you're trying to find an acceptable solution that partially satisfies both individuals' concerns. So to me, this sounds, well, that's
sounds
what
like
we
a
said.
Compromise.
Yeah, to me, that sounds like a compromise. So directly compromising. But, I know a lot of people who say in relationships, they're like, you should not compromise. I do not want to have to compromise. And I kind of get that. And I'm like, that sounds good. And you also have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I'm kind of on the fence with it.
I think timing, inevitably you're going to have to compromise at some point in time. Like it is what it is. But if your whole life,
some people see a compromise as just like a loss. And I think it's just, there's levels.
And if you're always the one like not getting yourself heard and your stuff's on the back burner, that's different. But I feel like, sometimes in life you just got to compromise, and that is, this is a good thing. Like really being flexible, like maybe in a business agreement or a work agreement, or talking to your boss about a different project or something, like maybe being flexible, working with another team. One of my friends was like fighting. We were on vacation. She was like upset at her team because this is like two teams that work together to do this pitch, and they kept fucking with their slides, and they was messing with their slides, and they was doing this and they was doing this. And I'm like, a compromise would have been good in that situation. Y'all got these slides to these slides, or you have them from this date to this date, then we get them. And then
why wouldn't it be?
Because they weren't listening.
Delegated like that.
They wanted to do the things their way and not compromise.
Yeah. And then you just be mad.
Yeah. And so I think it can be a good thing to allow people to feel like they're heard. Like another good situation I think about is with the kids that I work with. We compromise on certain things that they may want to do. We give them opportunities to give us recipes, and we cook every week. They give us Takis and chocolate cake and this and this.
Like you're on our program, but I'm going to let you have a say. So you feel like you have a little bit of ownership.
Because when people have ownership, they want to be more, they take more charge. They feel more bought in. So I think it's a beautiful thing. But again, it's a compromise because they don't get everything they want and we don't get everything, because they can't eat chocolate cake every day, but they can have it sometimes. And what does a healthier version of that look like? All right, you get one dessert a month that's vegan, and we going to make other stuff that's healthy for the rest of the time.
Ugh. Yuck. And then is this the last one? Sounds like it, because this one sounds like the one. And this is the OVO owls. Collaborating is this conflict language. Collaborating. I mean, that sounds like that should be the best one and effective one off top.
Yeah, it's like more assertive and more cooperative than the foxes, than compromising. So now you're collaborating. We're co-creating. That kind of sounds actually like.
But the only difference to me between collaborating and compromising is, with compromising, you're not getting everything you want. But also when you collaborate, you don't always get everything you want either, do you? And can't you collaborate to compromise? Let me actually look. Let's actually read what they're talking about and see how we feel about this one. So in the collaboration, the difference is you want to make everyone feel like they won. I feel like there's some people who don't feel like that's possible. Like, and that's what I was thinking too with the compromise thing, because I'm thinking about some particular people too, and it's like anything that if we're collaborating, I don't know. It's like if the other person gets anything they want, it's like a loss for them. But perhaps that's a deeper issue.
That it sounds like it. It just
a deeper
might be.
issue. So if you're looking for a win-win solution that completely satisfies the concerns of both individuals involved, so also this probably takes a lot longer, and this requires having this conflict style with another person or party that is willing to take time to really care about a solution. So I think the fact in general that you can have two parties be willing to collaborate is probably a great sign for that relationship being a strong relationship.
Yeah, because I think it takes a lot of trust to take that time and to really work through things. I also like that it pointed out the difference in like compromising and collaboration, that there has to be an opportunity for a win-win in order for it to be more of a collaboration. Whereas like compromising, there necessarily can't be a win-win.
Yeah, sometimes. But do you always think there's a win-win? I think there's some, I don't want to call them like teachers, but there's some people, you know, in some of the stuff that we'll read where I believe, I want to say that I've seen, read, and heard about like that's the goal is like for everybody to win. But I'm trying to think of like, do I really believe that? And it might only be because it's like it's a win-win because, you know, I don't care, you know, type of thing. And like that's not really.
Yeah, no, I think the difference and kind of what I'm feeling from this is that there's a lot of concern and intention put into the negotiations and the working through. More. So there's trust. Yeah, you care more. And you also care about like the outcome for them. So it's not like a us versus you. And I think anytime you're in that, you can't really collaborate because you're trying to win something. Even in compromise, I think it could be a win. We got a little bit more than they did and we cool with that. Versus collaborating, it's like, okay, what can we do for both of us to actually feel really good about this? And how can, you know, I care about them that little extra mile.
Yeah, so one thing I noticed about all of these different styles, competing, avoiding, accommodating, compromising, and collaborating, is it seems like I can easily tell at what timeline of like, you know, being in the conflict, you may engage in this way, or how over time you could look at these different ways or catch yourself and wait, and then later it will be more thoughtful or more intentional to be the other. But I think it's pretty cool if somebody is able to like right in the moment, and I've experienced it sometimes where like right in the moment of conflict, like you can kind of, I don't know, it's like making a decision, like a decision about how much do I care and how much do I want to own this, and then like where you're way chill or you're like not chill. And sometimes it's sometimes things happen and you're like immediately like on 100. And all of it, I think, to something you kind of mentioned earlier, is a reflection of like, you know, what's those points for you? Because everybody has, what do they call buttons? Everybody has like a different, you know, button, where it's like some things like you could try all you want, that's not gonna bother me, and then it'll be something else that really does. So yeah, so it's important with like your relationships, and this is all very applicable for coworkers or people who are colleagues, to personal relationships. So, and all of it is important in order to be able to move forward and in order to preserve relationships that are important for you.
And so I would say in this next week or anytime you notice conflict, take a pause and notice how you're feeling and where you want to go, and then decide if that's the best course of action for this particular conflict in this moment. Because I've been getting really good at this. That's why I wanted to talk about it today. I've been getting really good most of the time, unless those other buttons are tap danced on and then 0 to 110 and I have to work on it. But for the most part, like being able to pause and be like, I really want to say this thing, but I'm not right now because it's not helpful. And I really care about this relationship.
Is this something that you learned and were teaching in some of your teaching and doing classes, or no?
No, not this particular one. I've studied a lot of different conflict languages and like talked about them. And whenever we worked in our teams, we had to, you know, role play conflict, and we do conflict management with the kids. I don't think I've
ever heard about conflict styles.
Yeah, we've worked through conflict with the kids, but we haven't ever given them the language. But I'm starting to think it would be a good thing for them to have and to notice, because they know a good reaction to something versus something that might not be healthy. Like they can tell that already. So it's like maybe helping them understand. And I think it just helps relationships if you understand yourself better.
I will say though, I think that after going through the whole list, it is hard to just be like, to be one language or one style in general. So I think to your point, like, yeah, you're going to be a mix of all of these things depending on, you know, the parties involved, relationships, all the stuff. So it's definitely important to like understand the pros of all of them, because if you do know where you may fall into this line more quickly, then at least you can understand the pro of it and maybe lean in on that. So
yeah, and give you healthier outcomes. Like, you don't need to compete with everybody, but there are some great things in there to compete for. You don't have to collaborate with everybody.
Yep.
Don't waste your time or theirs. Like,
Yep.
it's okay.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. Because sometimes people have problems, even like when you do need to go a little harder and be a little more cutthroat. Because in some cases, it's not, you're not really on the same side. So that's real. Good points. Good points, Carlie. Okay, well, I learned something this week. I hope you all learned something about your conflict language. Let us know in comments or anywhere on social what you feel the language that you align with most is. And like Carlie said, pay attention this week, take a pause, and happy fighting.
Peace.